Anti-Torture Act of 2009. Torture refers to an act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for purposes of obtaining from him or a third person information or confession, punishing him for an act he or a third person has committed or is suspected of having committed, or intimidating or coercing him or a third person, or for any reason based on discrimination of any kind, when such pain or suffering is inflicted by or at the instigation of or with the consent or acquiescence of a person in authority or agent of a person in authority. It does not include pain or suffering arising from, inherent in, or incidental to lawful sanction. Section 4 of RA 9745. Torture shall include physical torture and mental or psychological torture. Physical torture is a form of treatment or punishment inflicted by a person in authority or agent of a person in authority upon another in his or her custody that causes severe pain, exhaustion, disability, or dysfunction of one or more parts of the body. Physical torture includes 1. Systematic beating, head banging, punching, kicking, striking with truncheon or rifle, butt, or other similar objects, and jumping on the stomach. 2. Food deprivation or forcible feeding with spoiled food, animal or human excreta, and other stuff or substances not normally eaten. 3. Electric shock. 4. Cigarette burning. Burning by electrically heated rods, hot oil, acid, by the rubbing of pepper or other chemical substances on mucous membranes, or acids or spices directly on the wound. 5. The submersion of the head in water or water polluted with excrement, urine, vomit, and or blood until the brink of suffocation. 6. Being tied or forced to assume fixed and stressful bodily position. 7. Rape and sexual abuse, including the insertion of foreign objects into the sex organ or rectum, or electrical torture of the genitals. 8. Mutilation or amputation of the essential parts of the body, such as the genitalia, ear, tongue. 9. Dental torture or the forced extraction of the teeth. 10. Pulling out of fingernails. 11. Harmful exposure of the elements such as sunlight and extreme cold. 12. The use of plastic bag and other materials placed over the head to the point of asphyxiation. 13. The use of psychoactive drugs to change the perception, memory, alertness, or will of a person, such as 1. The administration of drugs to induce confession or reduce mental competency, or 2. The use of drugs to induce extreme pain or certain symptoms of a disease. And 14. Other analogous acts of physical torture. Mental torture or physiological torture refers to acts committed by a person in authority or agent of a person in authority which are calculated to affect or confuse the mind and or undermine a person's dignity and morale, such as mental or psychological torture includes 1. Blindfold. 2. Threatening a person or his relative with bodily harm, execution of other wrongful acts. 3. Confinement in solitary cells or secret detention places. 4. Prolonged interrogation. 5. Preparing a prisoner for a show trial, public display or public humiliation of a detainee or prisoner. 6. Causing unscheduled transfer of a person deprived of liberty from one place to another, creating the belief that he shall be summarily executed. 7. Maltreating a member or members of a person's family. 8. causing the torture sessions to be witnessed by the person's family, relatives, or any third party. Number 9. Denial of sleep or rest. Number 10. Shame infliction, such as stripping the person naked, parading him in public places, shaving the victim's head, or putting marks on his body against his will. 11. Deliberately prohibiting the victim to communicate with any member of his family. 12. Other analogous acts of mental or psychological torture, Section 4 of RA 9745. To illustrate, BB was arrested for committing a bailable offense and detained in solitary confinement. He was able to post bail after 2 weeks of detention. During the period of detention, he was not given any food. Such deprivation caused him physical discomfort. Food deprivation and confinement in solitary cell are considered as physical and psychological torture under Section 4, Number 2 of RA 9745. Hence, the crime committed is torture. 2013. Independent crime. Torture as a crime shall not absorb or shall not be absorbed by any other crime or felony committed as a consequence or as a means in the conduct or commission thereof, in which case torture shall be treated as a separate and independent criminal act, whose penalties shall be impossible without prejudice to any criminal liability, provided for by domestic and international laws. Other forms of torture. Other cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment refers to deliberate and aggravated treatment or punishment, which is not constitutive of the crime of torture, inflicted by a person in authority or agent of a person in authority against a person under his or her custody, which attains a level of severity causing suffering, gross humiliation, or debasement to the latter. Section 5 RA 9745. Application of the provisions of the Revised Penal Code. The provisions of the Revised Penal Code, insofar as they are applicable, shall be supplementary to this Act. Moreover, if the commission of any crimes against persons and crimes against personal liberty and security of the Revised Penal Code is attended by any of the acts constituting torture and other cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment, the penalty to be imposed shall be in its maximum period. Section 22 of RA 9745. Persons liable. Under Section 13 of RA 9745, principle by direct participation and principle by inducement, the concept of which is the same as the under Article 17 of the Revised Penal Code, are liable. Likewise, the law expressly states that any superior, military, police, or law enforcement officer or senior government official who issued an order to any lower-ranking personnel to commit torture for whatever purpose shall be held equally liable as principal. Under Articles 17 and 18 of the Revised Penal Code, one who concurs with the criminal design of the principal by direct participation is liable as principal by indispensable cooperation if the crime would not have been accomplished without his participation and dispensable cooperation, or as an accomplice if his previous or simultaneous participation merely supplies the principal moral or material aid in an efficacious way, dispensable of cooperation. However, under Section 13 of RA 9745, both the principal by indispensable cooperation and accomplice are liable as principals. It expressly states that a person who cooperated in the execution of the act of torture by previous or simultaneous acts shall be liable as principal without distinction as to whether the participation is indispensable or not. Under Section 13 of RA 9745, an accessory is also liable for torture. The concept of an accessory under this provision is the same as that under Article 19 of the Revised Penal Code, with 3 variations. Under RA 9745, an accessory must be a public officer. The accessory acts of harboring, concealing, or assisting in the escape of the principal in the act of torture must be done with the abuse of the official's public functions, and the relationship between the principal and accessory is not an exempting circumstance. A superior officer on the basis of command responsibility is also liable for torture as principal. Under Section 13 of RA 9745, the immediate commanding officer of the unit concerned of the AFP or the immediate senior public official of the PNP and other law enforcement agencies shall be held liable as a principal to the crime of torture for any act or omission or negligence committed by him that shall have led, assisted, abetted, or allowed, whether directly or indirectly, the commission thereof by his subordinates. If he has knowledge of or, owing to the circumstances at the time, should have known that acts of torture or other cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment shall be committed, are being committed, or have been committed by his subordinate or by others within his area of responsibility, and, despite such knowledge, did not take preventive or corrective action either before, during, or immediately after its commission, when he has the authority to prevent or investigate allegations of torture or other cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment, but failed to prevent or investigate allegations of such act, whether deliberately or due to negligence, shall also be liable as principal. Section 13 of RA 9745 explicitly makes superiors criminally liable under the doctrine of command responsibility. Thus, liability under the doctrine of command responsibility is no longer simply administrative based on neglect of duty, but is now criminal. Illustration: X, a police officer, placed a hood on the head of W, a suspected drug pusher, and watched as Y and C, police trainees, beat up and tortured Y to get his confession. X is liable as principal for the crime of torture. Under Section 13 of RA number 9745, immediate senior public official of the PNP shall be held liable as principal to the crime of torture if he has knowledge that acts of torture are being committed by his subordinates and did not take preventive action during its commission. Section 13 of RA 9745 explicitly makes superiors criminally liable under the doctrine of command responsibility. 2011 Bar Exam.